Admiral Zex Thara stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship Times Eternal Conquest *. Her forearms crossed in satisfaction as she gazed at the tactical display. The blue-green world hung before them like a ripe fruit, completely unaware of its impending doom. Earth, they called it. The third planet of an unremarkable yellow star in the outer rim of the galaxy. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 47 worlds for the Dominion Empire. All 7,000 ships are in position, Admiral, reported Commander Vex's Tal from his station. The orbital bombardment platforms are charged and ready. Ground forces are prepared for deployment. Zex Thara's mandibles clicked in amusement. This was going to be embarrassingly easy. According to their intelligence, these humans had barely achieved interplanetary travel. They had primitive rockets that could barely reach their own moon, and their most advanced weapons were nuclear fission bombs that could destroy a city at most. The Dominion's smallest patrol craft carried plasma cannons that could glass entire continents. The intelligence briefing had been laughably simple. Humans were a young species, barely 10,000 years into their civilization. They fought among themselves constantly. Divided into hundreds of small nation-states, they had no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, no quantum weapons. They were still burning fossil fuels for energy, while the Dominion had mastered zero-point energy extraction millennia ago. Begin the Standard Conquest Protocol, Zex Thara ordered. Open a communication channel to the dominant political entities on the planet's surface. The massive holographic display flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Dominion flagship to multiple locations on Earth simultaneously. Zex Thara could see various human leaders in what appeared to be their command centers, their primitive communications technology barely managing to maintain the connection. The humans looked exactly as described in the intelligence reports. Bipedal mammals, with soft pink or brown skin, small eyes, and no natural weapons or armor. They wore elaborate coverings that seemed to serve no protective purpose whatsoever. Some had artificial optical enhancement devices perched on their faces, suggesting their natural vision was inadequate. Greetings, inhabitants of the world you call Earth, Zex Thara began, her universal translator converting her words into the various primitive languages of the planet. I am Admiral Zex Thara of the Dominion Imperial Fleet. Your world has been selected for integration into the Dominion Empire. She paused, watching the humans exchange glances with each other through their communication devices. They looked confused, which was typical. Most primitive species initially believed first contact was some kind of elaborate hoax. You have one standard time unit to surrender unconditionally, she continued. Lay down your weapons, gather in designated areas, and prepare for processing. Your cooperation will determine whether your species survives as workers in the Empire or is eliminated entirely. One of the humans, a male with gray hair and wearing an elaborate uniform covered in colorful patches, leaned forward. This is President Harrison of the United Earth Defense Council. I don't know what kind of joke this is supposed to be, but this is no joke, human, Zex Thara interrupted. Observe. She gestured to her weapons officer, who fired a single plasma bolt from the flagship's secondary battery. The beam lanced down through Earth's atmosphere and struck an uninhabited island in what the humans called the Pacific Ocean. The entire landmass, several square kilometers of rock and earth, instantly vaporized in a brilliant flash of superheated plasma. The communication feeds showed the human leaders reacting with shock and terror. Some were shouting orders to subordinates who had rushed into their command centers. Others sat in stunned silence, staring at their primitive monitoring equipment that was no doubt detecting the massive energy discharge. That was our smallest weapon, Zex Thara explained calmly. We have 7,000 ships in orbit around your world, each capable of destroying your entire civilization without effort. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed. You have 59 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. She cut the communication and turned to her tactical officer. Deploy the sensor networks. I want complete coverage of their military installations. If they attempt any aggressive action, destroy the offending facility immediately. Admiral, her communications officer called out. We're detecting massive electromagnetic activity across the planet's surface. It appears they're mobilizing their military forces. Zex Thara's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Why did primitive species always choose the path of maximum destruction for themselves? Did they really believe their crude kinetic weapons and chemical explosives could pose any threat to Dominion shields and armor? Very well, she said. Prepare to demonstrate our overwhelming superiority. Target their largest military installation and fire a warning shot that will destroy exactly half of it. Perhaps a more dramatic demonstration will help them understand their situation. The tactical display updated to show a massive military complex on the largest continent. According to their scans, it housed thousands of their primitive aircraft and ground vehicles. A single precise shot would eliminate their most significant military asset, while leaving enough intact to show the humans exactly how precise Dominion weapons could be. Target acquired. Admiral, reported the weapons officer. Charging main plasma cannon. Fire when ready. The Time's Eternal Conquest Times had destroyed the defensive fleets of dozens of worlds. Its main plasma cannon could punch through the shields of a Dominion battlecruiser and still have enough power to crack a moon against an unshielded planet with no orbital defenses. It was like using a nuclear weapon to kill an insect. The weapon charged with a deep thrumming that resonated through the ship's hull. Energy readings spiked across the bridge displays as the plasma cannon drew power from the ship's core. In seconds, it would unleash devastation that would end any thoughts of human resistance. Weapon charged and ready, Admiral. Fire. The bridge crew watched their displays as the plasma bolt lanced toward the planet's surface. It would take only seconds to reach its target and demonstrate beyond any doubt that resistance was futile. But something impossible happened. The plasma bolt, containing enough energy to level a mountain range, simply vanished. One moment it was streaking toward Earth's surface. The next, it was gone. Not deflected, not absorbed, not disrupted. Gone, as if it had never existed. What happened? Zexthera demanded. Status report. The weapons officer frantically checked his instruments. Admiral, I don't understand. The weapon fired normally. All systems show green, but the plasma bolt just disappeared. Impossible. Check the targeting systems. Maybe it missed the planet entirely. No, Admiral. The bolt was on target. It vanished exactly 1,000 kilometers above the planet's surface. Zexthera stared at the tactical display, her mind racing. In 3 centuries of military service, she had never seen anything like this. Plasma weapons were pure energy. They couldn't simply disappear unless they were absorbed by something with impossibly advanced energy manipulation technology. Scan the area where the bolt vanished, she ordered. Look for any kind of energy field or defensive system. The science officer worked frantically at his station. Admiral, there's nothing there. No energy signatures, no defensive installations, no technology of any kind. It's just empty space. A chill ran down Zexthera's spine. The humans had appeared to be a primitive species with no advanced technology whatsoever. Their own communications proved they were shocked by the Dominion's arrival, yet somehow they had made a plasma cannon shot simply cease to exist. Admiral, the communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through. The holographic display activated again, but this time it showed only a single human. He appeared to be sitting in a simple room with white walls and basic furniture. He wore plain clothing and had an unremarkable appearance. The kind of human who would blend into any crowd on their planet. Greetings, Admiral Zexthera, the human said calmly. My name is Dr. James Chen. I represent Earth's actual government. Zexthera's throat sacs pulsed with confusion. Your actual government? But we contacted your leaders. You contacted the people we allow to think they're in charge. Doctor, Chen interrupted with a slight smile. They serve a useful purpose in managing the civilian population. But they don't make decisions about matters like this. Impossible, Zexthera snarled. Our intelligence is perfect. We know everything about your species and your world. You know what we wanted you to know, Dr. Chen replied. Tell me, Admiral, how long have you been watching our world? The question caught her off guard. Our deep space scouts discovered your system approximately 50 standard years ago. We've been conducting surveillance for the past 30 years, gathering intelligence for the eventual conquest. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. 30 years. Yes, that would explain why you think we're still using chemical rockets and nuclear fission. Those technologies serve their purpose in maintaining the illusion, but they're hardly representative of human capability. What are you talking about? Zexthera demanded. Your most advanced technology barely reaches your own moon. The ships we allow you to see barely reach our moon, Dr. Chen corrected. Would you like to see what human technology actually looks like? Before Zexthara could respond, her tactical officer called out in alarm. Admiral! New contacts appearing throughout the system. The tactical display exploded with new signatures. Ships were materializing from what appeared to be empty space, not just around Earth, but throughout the entire solar system. They appeared near the gas giant planets, around the asteroid belt, even near the system's star itself. But these weren't ships in any conventional sense. They had no visible hulls, no weapons ports, no engine exhausts. They appeared to be geometric shapes made of pure energy, constantly shifting and flowing like living mathematics. Some were enormous, dwarfing the largest Dominion battleships. Others were smaller but moved with impossible speed and agility. How many? Zexthera whispered. Admiral, her tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. I count over 50,000 contacts, and more, appearing every second. Zexthera stared at the display in disbelief. The Dominion fleet had 7,000 ships, the largest invasion force ever assembled, but the humans were deploying a fleet more than 10 times larger, and their technology was clearly far beyond anything in the Dominion Empire. This is impossible, she said. If you possessed such technology, why maintain the deception? Why allow us to believe you were primitive? Doctor. Chen's expression became serious. Because, Admiral, we've been waiting for you. Dr. Chen's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Admiral Zexthera felt her confidence crumbling as she stared at the tactical display showing impossible numbers of human vessels materializing throughout the solar system. Waiting for us? She managed to ask. What do you mean? The Dominion Empire has conquered 47 worlds, Dr. Chen replied, his voice taking on a harder edge. We've been monitoring your expansion for quite some time. Every species you've enslaved or exterminated, every world you've stripped of resources, every atrocity committed in the name of your empire. We've been waiting for you to make the mistake of coming here. The communications officer suddenly called out. Admiral, we're being hailed by multiple human vessels simultaneously. Put them through. Zexthara ordered. Though she was beginning to suspect this conversation was far from over, the holographic display split into dozens of smaller screens, each showing a different human. They wore various uniforms, sat in different command centers, and represented what appeared to be multiple military organizations. But there was something unsettling about them all. They moved with too much precision, spoke with too much coordination. It was as if they were all connected somehow. Admiral Zexthera, they spoke in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing from this system, or we will demonstrate why the Dominion Empire ends here. Zexthera's pride as a conqueror finally overcame her growing fear. She had not risen to command the largest invasion fleet in Dominion history by backing down from impossible odds. If these humans wanted to fight, they would learn why the Dominion was the most feared empire in the galaxy. All ships, she broadcast to her fleet. Battle Formation Alpha 7. Prepare for full-scale engagement. Show these primitives what happens when they threaten the Dominion Empire. The 7,000 ships of the invasion fleet moved with practiced precision, forming attack formations that had conquered dozens of worlds. Their shields powered up to maximum strength, their weapons charged, and their fighters launched by the thousands. It was a display of military might that had never failed to crush any opposition. 30 seconds have elapsed, Dr. Chen announced calmly from his simple room. You were warned. What happened next would be discussed in hushed whispers throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The human ships didn't attack in any conventional sense. They simply existed near the Dominion vessels, and reality itself seemed to bend around them. The first thing Zexthera noticed was the complete failure of her ship's shields. Not a gradual degradation or an overload from massive weapons fire. The shields simply stopped existing, as if the fundamental forces that generated them had been politely asked to go elsewhere. "Shield generators are offline," her chief engineer reported in panic. "But Admiral, they're not damaged or overloaded. They're just not working. It's like the laws of physics have been suspended." Before she could respond, her weapons officer added his own report of impossibility. "All weapons systems are non-responsive. Not destroyed, not damaged, just non-functional. The plasma cannons won't fire. The kinetic weapons won't launch. Even the point defense systems are completely inert." But the most disturbing report came from her navigation officer. "Admiral, we've lost all propulsion. Engines are intact and powered, but we're not moving. It's as if space itself won't let us change position." Across the entire Dominion fleet, the same impossible reports came flooding in. 7,000 of the most advanced warships in the known galaxy had been rendered completely helpless, without a single shot being fired. Their crews were unharmed, their ships undamaged, but every system designed for war had simply stopped functioning. Dr. Chen appeared on the main display again, but now he was no longer alone in his simple room. Behind him, Zexthera could see what appeared to be a massive command center filled with technology that defied comprehension. Holographic displays showed impossible equations, three-dimensional models of space-time itself, and real-time monitoring of forces and energies that the Dominion had never imagined existed. "You're wondering how we did this," Dr. Chen said, reading her expression perfectly. "You're trying to understand what technology could disable your weapons without damaging them, could neutralize your shields without overloading them, could lock your ships in space without touching your engines." Zexthera found her voice. "It's impossible. No known technology." "Exactly," Dr. Chen interrupted. "No known technology. You've spent millennia mastering the manipulation of matter and energy, and you've become very good at it. But matter and energy are just the surface layer of reality. Underneath them are far more fundamental forces." The display behind him shifted to show what appeared to be a simplified model of space-time. Zexthera watched in fascination as the human manipulated the demonstration, showing how reality itself could be treated like a malleable substance. "We learned to manipulate the information layer of reality itself," Dr. Chen explained. "Your shields exist because certain particles interact in specific ways under specific conditions. We simply changed the information that defines those interactions. Your weapons fire because fusion releases energy in predictable patterns. We altered the information that governs those patterns. Your ships move because reaction drives push against space-time. We modified the local information that determines how space-time responds to matter." Commander Vexistal, who had remained silent in stunned shock, finally found his voice. "You're saying you can rewrite the laws of physics?" "Not rewrite," Dr. Chen corrected. "The laws themselves are absolute. But the parameters that define how those laws express themselves in local reality are surprisingly flexible, if you know how to access them." Zexthera felt a chill of true terror run through her. The Dominion Empire had achieved galactic dominance through superior technology and military might. But these humans were operating on a level that made Dominion technology look like stone tools. They weren't just more advanced, they were playing by entirely different rules. "How?" she whispered. "How did a primitive species develop such capabilities?" Dr. Chen's expression became sad. "We weren't always like this. 500 years ago, we were exactly what you think we are. A young species just beginning to explore space. We had small colonies on nearby worlds, primitive fusion technology, and we thought we understood how the universe worked." The display behind him changed to show historical images of early human space exploration. Primitive rockets, basic habitats. Humans in bulky environmental suits, working to establish footholds beyond their home world. Then the Kethvar found us. Zexthara's throat sacs contracted in shock. The Kethvar were legendary, even to the Dominion. An ancient species that had ruled a vast empire tens of thousands of years ago, before mysteriously vanishing. Their ruins could be found throughout the galaxy, containing technology so advanced that even the Dominion couldn't understand most of it. The Kethvar Empire discovered our early colonies and decided we would make useful slaves, Dr. Chen continued. They had technology that could manipulate space and time, weapons that could destroy stars, the ability to travel instantly between any points in the galaxy. Compared to them, we were less than insects. The display showed images of a war that Zexthara could barely comprehend, massive alien vessels that seemed to bend space around themselves, weapons that caused suns to collapse into black holes. Entire human worlds simply vanishing from existence. They didn't bother with conquest or demands for surrender. They simply began harvesting us. Entire populations would disappear overnight, taken to work in their industrial facilities, scattered across the galaxy. Billions of humans died in their slave camps. Dr. Chen paused, and for a moment the professional composure slipped to reveal something harder underneath. But humans have one advantage that the Kethvar hadn't encountered before. We learn, not just technology or tactics, we learn how to become something different than what we were. The historical display showed the tide of the war beginning to change. Human ships that had started the conflict as barely functional chemical rockets were transforming into something unrecognizable. Their crews were changing too, developing capabilities that went far beyond normal human biology. It took us 200 years, Dr. Chen said. 200 years of fighting a war against godlike beings with technology beyond imagination. We lost 90% of our population. We lost our original homeworld. We lost our original forms. Zexthara looked more carefully at the humans on the communication screens around her. Now that she knew what to look for, she could see they weren't entirely biological anymore. Their movements were too precise, their coordination too perfect. They had enhanced themselves far beyond their original species limitations. The war ended when we learned to do what I just demonstrated to you. Dr. Chen continued. We gained the ability to manipulate the information substrate of reality itself. The Kethvar, for all their power, had never developed that particular capability. When we turned it against them, their empire collapsed in a matter of days. What happened to them? We gave them the same choice I'm about to give you, Dr. Chen replied. Leave the galaxy and never return, or be permanently prevented from harming anyone ever again. They chose to leave. Zexthara stared at this unremarkable-looking human who had just casually mentioned destroying an empire that had ruled the galaxy when the Dominion was still primitive tribes on their homeworld. But that was 300 years ago, Dr. Chen continued. Since then, we've been watching younger species repeat the same pattern. They develop space travel, they encounter weaker civilizations, and they decide that conquest and slavery are acceptable. The Dominion Empire is just the latest example. The tactical display updated to show that the human fleet had grown even larger. There were now hundreds of thousands of vessels throughout the solar system, and more were appearing every second. But Zexthara was beginning to understand that the numbers didn't matter. Each of those ships could apparently rewrite reality at will. So what happens now? She asked. Now you have the same choice the Kethvar had. Dr. Chen replied. Your empire ends today. You can accept that peacefully, return to your homeworld, and learn to coexist with other species as equals. Or you can resist, and we will ensure that you never threaten anyone again. And if we choose to resist? Dr. Chen's expression became genuinely sad. Then every Dominion world will find its weapons unable to function, its ships unable to leave their systems, and its population unable to harm others. You'll remain free to live your lives and develop your civilization. But your capacity for conquest and oppression will be permanently removed. Commander Vexatal leaned close to whisper urgently, Admiral, we must warn the Empire. Even if we can't escape, we can send a message. Your communications have been disabled for the past 10 minutes, Dr. Chen said, apparently having overheard the whisper despite speaking in Dominion military code. No messages are leaving this system. As far as the rest of your empire knows, your invasion fleet is proceeding according to plan. Zexthara realized with growing horror that she was facing an opponent who had anticipated every possible move. The humans hadn't just defeated the Dominion fleet. They had trapped it completely, ensuring that no warning could reach the Empire. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "You have already decided, Doctor," Chen replied. "The moment you fired on Earth, you chose resistance over peaceful withdrawal. The moment you threatened genocide against my species, you chose to become a problem that required a permanent solution." Around the Dominion fleet, the geometric shapes of the human vessels began to pulse with an inner light that hurt to look at. Reality itself seemed to ripple around them like water disturbed by falling stones. "Goodbye, Admiral Zexthera," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Your empire's reign of terror ends now." The light emanating from the human vessels intensified, until it seemed to fill all of space around the Dominion fleet. Admiral Zexthara watched her instruments in growing disbelief as readings that should have been impossible appeared across every screen on the bridge. "Admiral," her science officer called out in a voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the fleet. But they're not affecting us physically. It's as if gravity itself has been disconnected from mass. Temporal readings are fluctuating wildly," added the navigation officer. "According to our chronometers, time is passing normally on the ship, but external time appears to be fluid." Dr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "What you're experiencing is the transition process. We're moving your fleet outside normal space-time, to a location where you can observe what comes next without being destroyed by it." "What comes next?" Zexthara demanded. "The end of the Dominion Empire." The main display shifted to show a view of the galaxy itself, as if they were somehow observing it from an impossible distance. Zexthara could see the spiral arms, the central black hole, the countless star systems that made up the galactic community. But there was something wrong with the image. It was too detailed, showing real-time activity across billions of light-years, as if distance meant nothing. "This is impossible," Commander Vextal whispered. "We can't be seeing the entire galaxy in real time. From your current location outside conventional spacetime, you can," Dr. Chen explained. "We want you to witness what happens when an empire based on conquest and oppression encounters humanity at its full capability." The display zoomed in to show the Dominion homeworld, a massive planet surrounded by orbital habitats and defense stations. It was the center of an empire that controlled thousands of star systems and trillions of beings, the most heavily defended location in the known galaxy. "Our homeworld has planetary shields that could withstand a supernova," Zexthara said desperately. "Defense platforms with weapons that can crack moons. The entire Third Fleet is stationed there permanently. You can't possibly..." Her words died as she watched the display. Geometric shapes similar to those around Earth were materializing throughout the Dominion home system. Not dozens or hundreds, but millions of them. They appeared around every planet, every space station, every ship in the vast defensive network. "How many ships do you have?" Commander Vextal asked in horrified fascination. "We stopped counting after the first billion, Doctor," Chen replied casually. "When you can manipulate the information substrate of reality, manufacturing becomes rather trivial. Matter and energy are just data, after all." The display showed the Dominion's most powerful weapons firing at the human vessels: planet-killing plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids, quantum torpedoes that could tear holes in space-time itself, gravitational weapons that could collapse a moon into a black hole. The combined firepower of the Dominion's ultimate defense was unleashed against humanity. Every shot simply vanished the moment it came within range of a human vessel. Not absorbed, not deflected, not disrupted. The energy simply ceased to exist. As if the weapons had fired blanks. "You're deleting our weapons fire," Zexthara realized with growing horror. "You're actually deleting energy from existence." "Energy cannot be created or destroyed," Dr. Chen corrected, "but it can be relocated. We're sending your weapons fire to empty regions of intergalactic space where it can dissipate harmlessly. It's more efficient than building shields." So, what happened next would be recorded in the final transmissions from the Dominion homeworld as the moment reality itself rebelled against tyranny. The human vessels didn't attack in any conventional sense. Instead, they began to sing. It wasn't sound in any normal sense, but rather a harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space-time itself. As the song spread throughout the Dominion home system, impossible changes began to manifest. The massive orbital weapons platforms simply faded from existence, not destroyed but rather convinced that they had never been built in the first place. The defensive fleets found their weapons transforming into instruments of peaceful exploration, their armor becoming scientific equipment, their crews suddenly remembering different orders entirely. "What are you doing to them?" Zexthera whispered. "We're correcting a historical error," Dr. Chen explained. "Your empire was built on the fundamental mistake of believing that might makes right. We're fixing that mistake by adjusting the information patterns that allowed it to exist." The display expanded to show other Dominion worlds throughout the galaxy. On each one, the same impossible transformation was taking place. Military installations were becoming research facilities. Weapons factories were shifting into infrastructure for peaceful development. Slave camps were opening as their guard systems spontaneously decided that freedom was a better option than oppression. "You're rewriting our entire civilization," Commander Vextal said in awe. "We're revealing what your civilization was meant to become," Dr. Chen corrected. "Every species has the potential for greatness or for destructive selfishness. We're simply adjusting the local probability curves to favor the better angels of your nature." Admiral Zexthara watched her life's work, the empire she had served with absolute loyalty, transforming before her eyes into something unrecognizable. But strangely, she felt no anger or despair. Instead, there was a growing sense of relief, as if a massive weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "I'm receiving transmissions from Dominion worlds throughout the Empire, but they're different. Put them through." The display filled with images from across the former Dominion Empire. Zexthera expected to see panic, resistance, desperate attempts to fight against the human intervention. Instead, she saw something that shocked her more than any display of impossible technology. Her people looked happy. On world after world, Dominion citizens were emerging from underground shelters and enclosed habitats to breathe fresh air for the first time in generations. The perpetual state of military readiness that had defined their empire was being replaced by something they had forgotten existed: peace. Children who had been raised to see conquest as the highest virtue were playing games that had no winners or losers, just shared enjoyment. Adults who had spent their lives building weapons were using the same skills to create art, music, and technologies designed to improve life rather than end it. "They're not resisting," Zexthera observed in wonder, "because deep down, they never wanted to live that way," Dr. Chen explained. "Your empire was sustained by fear, propaganda, and the constant threat of external enemies. Remove those artificial constraints, and most beings naturally choose cooperation over conflict." The display focused on the Dominion homeworld's capital city. The massive monuments to military victory were transforming into gardens and schools. The government buildings designed to project intimidation were shifting into community centers and libraries. Even the architecture itself was becoming more welcoming and open. "What about those who truly believed in conquest?" Commander Vextal asked. "There were many who genuinely thought the Dominion way was superior." "They're learning," Dr. Chen replied, and the display showed some of those individuals. They looked confused at first, then gradually thoughtful as new perspectives and possibilities became apparent to them. "We didn't change their fundamental nature, just removed the barriers that prevented them from considering alternatives." Admiral Zexthara found herself thinking about her own career, the worlds she had conquered, the species she had enslaved or destroyed. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to consider what else she might have accomplished with her talents and dedication. "What happens to us?" she asked. "To this fleet? That depends on what you choose to do with your lives," Dr. Chen replied. "Your ships can be converted into exploration vessels, research platforms, or colony ships to help your people spread throughout the galaxy as peaceful neighbors rather than conquerors. Your crews can use their skills to build rather than destroy." The geometric human vessels around the Dominion fleet began to pulse with a different kind of light, warmer and more welcoming than the harsh illumination of moments before. As it touched each ship, Zexthara could feel her vessel changing around her. The weapons were still there, but they had become tools for clearing asteroid fields and mining operations. The armor remained, but it was now designed to protect exploration crews from environmental hazards rather than enemy fire. The communication systems were enhanced to facilitate diplomacy and cultural exchange rather than coordinate military strikes. "You're giving us a chance to start over," she realized. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were," Dr. Chen said simply. "The question is whether you'll take it." Around the bridge, Zexthera could see her crew looking at their transformed stations with growing wonder. The same instruments that had once calculated optimal bombardment patterns now displayed star charts for scientific surveys. Weapons targeting systems had become navigation aids for peaceful exploration. "Admiral," her former weapons officer called out, his voice filled with something she had never heard from him before: hope. "These new systems, they're showing us worlds we could explore, species we could meet as friends instead of conquerors. There's so much we could learn." For the first time in her military career, Admiral Zexthara made a decision based not on orders from above or the requirements of conquest, but on what felt right. "Set course for the Outer Rim," she ordered. "Let's find some new worlds to explore." As the former Dominion fleet began moving toward unknown regions of space, Dr. Chen appeared one last time on their communication screen. "One final thing," he said. "You're wondering why we went to all this trouble, instead of simply destroying your empire." Zexthera nodded. It was a question that had been bothering her. Beings with such incredible power could have ended the Dominion threat with far less effort. "Because," Dr. Chen explained, "we remember what it was like to be where you are now. Young, aggressive, convinced that strength was the only thing that mattered. If the Kethvar had simply destroyed us instead of forcing us to grow, the galaxy would have lost everything humanity eventually became." He smiled, and for the first time Zexthera saw not a terrifying enemy, but a being who genuinely cared about the future of all life in the galaxy. "Every species has the potential for greatness," he continued. "Our job isn't to rule the galaxy or impose our will on others. Our job is to make sure that every species gets the chance to discover their own greatness." The communication ended, and the human fleet began to fade from view as they departed for whatever impossible realm they called home. The former Dominion vessels found themselves alone in space. But they were no longer the instruments of an empire built on conquest and fear. They were explorers, setting out to discover what they could build instead of what they could destroy. Admiral Zexthara looked out at the stars ahead and felt something she had never experienced before in her centuries of military service. She felt free.